What's up, Bigfooters and other outdoorsy enthused folks? My name is Brady, and today we ask the question, where's all the Bigfoot scat? Alright, welcome back guys. The other day I posted on my Twitter and Facebook asking what video you guys want to see next. And while I got a few answers, I decided to tackle this topic. Where is all the Bigfoot scat? This has been a question that has been asked for years. Why don't we find Bigfoot scat? Because a large omnivore like a Sasquatch would be dropping droppings everywhere, you know? Why don't we find them more often like we do with bears and deer and other wildlife that live in the areas? So today we are going to be tackling that topic. Let's jump right in. One of the first things to consider is that Sasquatches would most likely be a large omnivorous animal in the woods, and the other large omnivorous mammal in the woods is a bear, like grizzly bears, black bears, and they would have similar diets of like berries and plants and meats as well. So the theory is perhaps the Sasquatch and bear scat would look very similar. Well, I'm not advocating that you go in the woods and collect every bear scat you find, thinking that it might be a Bigfoot scat and sending it to Dr. Distel or Dr. Meldrum. I'm just saying that since bears and Sasquatches are pretty similar in size and would most likely be pretty similar in diet, that it's not too far of a stretch that their scat would look at least somewhat similar. So if people were just hiking through the woods and they saw what they thought was a bear scat on the ground, they're obviously not going to collect or do anything with it because they're just going to assume there's a bear and that there's a bear in the area. But perhaps it's the scat of a squatch. Another idea that's been tossed around is that perhaps Sasquatches bury their own scat. Humans actually bury our own scat. If we're being polite in the woods, we bury our scat because it's gross to have it laying around. Other campers might come by and see it. So perhaps Bigfoots do the same thing. They want to keep their area clean, don't want it smelling, I guess. Or maybe they know that we would collect it, who knows. Perhaps they bury their scat, or they have special locations where they only scat. But that is one idea, that perhaps they would just be digging holes and burying their scat so people can't find it, or so they can't find each other, who knows. And on the opposite scale is perhaps Bigfoots aren't neat freaks and perhaps they eat their own scat. This would especially be plausible if you're closer to Bigfoots being apes rather than more human-like. Of course humans are apes, but I'm saying more like great apes like gorillas and chimpanzees as opposed to humans. If you think that they're more ape-like like gorillas and chimpanzees, I don't think this would really be that far of a stretch, because if you go to zoos, sometimes, I've seen this personally, a gorilla will do its business, scoop it back up, and eat its own scat right out of its hands.
How do you do that? She knows how to tie up her own hair.
They just see it as, I mean, why not? If they're hungry, there's just some more food right there, and they might as well eat it, you know? When you're surviving in the woods, and if that's just something that you always do, that's not really seen as gross. I mean, of course, seen as disgusting to us. But if a Sasquatch just sees it as another food source, then it's very likely that it will eat its own scat. It's not that far of a stretch if you think that they are more closely related to apes than they are to Homo sapiens. Another thing to bring up is that people do find what have been reported to be Bigfoot or Sasquatch scat. One recent example of this find is a YouTuber named Nathan Rio. You guys know him as Utah Sasquatch. He was up in one of his areas when he found a large pile of scat with two huge footprints on either side. Now this would seem to indicate that the Sasquatch in question would just squat down and do its business just right there. And depending on what you think, perhaps it knew Nathan enough that it left that specifically for him to find, or maybe that's just a regular occurrence if you go deep enough into the woods. Perhaps they're just easier to find, and if you track them right. Another example that I personally investigated back in Ohio. My old pastor back in Ohio, he used to hunt on this guy's land, and this land was active. It had, the property owner said that he's seen some dark figures moving in the woods at night when he's hunting. He's heard wood knocks in the area, large, loud wood knocks. And next to this tree, they would always find this huge pile of scat, as if something sat up against the tree like they're doing wall squats and just sat down and did their business right next to the tree. And the interesting thing is, the scat disappeared once they chopped the tree down and never did it again there, indicating that perhaps it did lean its back up and drop scat right there. Because these guys are hunters. They know their animal scat, they know their bear, coyote, dog, and they said this was very human-like and very large, like too large to be human. And that's very interesting. I wish it could have been there before they cut the tree down to collect some samples. But unfortunately that was not the case. And I know other researchers have reported scat, but unfortunately did not collect it, or at least collect it properly. Different consistencies. Many people say it's more bear-like. Maybe many people say it's a mixture between bear and human. I know Matt Moneymaker from Finding Bigfoot reported that he once found a large pile of scat in the middle of a trail, and it was a huge pile, and it had like a creamy peanut butter consistency, which sounds pretty disgusting, but there are lots of different variations on what people identify as Sasquatch scat. Some people say it resembles that of horse scat, but it has like meat in it. It has like animal hair, bugs, and a whole bunch of other things, and berries. So that would seem to indicate that it's not a horse, and they know it's not bear scat, so perhaps that's Sasquatch scat. A lot of reasons you don't really hear about these more is that a lot of people don't really know how to properly collect scat, and even if you do, the chances of getting DNA samples I don't think are very high. I think it's pretty slim. Because there's really only one section of scat that would yield DNA. It's the part that comes out first, because as it is doing its business, a little bit of the DNA would come off onto that very first piece of its scat, but the rest of the scat is pretty useless. You can break it with a stick and search through it and see what the animal's eating, but it's not really going to give you any DNA. So a lot of people would pick up the wrong piece of the scat, or the wrong amount of scat, the wrong section, and it wouldn't even yield any DNA results. Now, a lot of skeptics would probably argue that a lot of the scat is simply just bear scat, or horse scat, as we said, or human scat, as weird as that sounds. But you know, there have been reports, especially this Utah Sasquatch report, where there's 2 huge footprints after he's been tracking the Sasquatch up a mountain, or up this wallow, and finding a humongous pile of scat in between 2 footprints. I find that really intriguing, and I think that could probably very likely be a potential Sasquatch sample. I'm not sure if he collected it or not. I'm not sure what he did with it, if he did photographs or measurements, but all I know is that there is one video of him documenting the scat with a video, and that's about it. I think that is all I heard from that scat sample. As of a definitive answer, I don't really know what a Sasquatch scat would definitively look like, so as of now it's just hypothesis of what it looks like based off of the diets that we think they eat, and based off of other large mammals' scat. But yeah, I don't really have a definitive answer. Perhaps they're just so rare that their scat is barely found, but a lot of people now think that they're not so rare, which, you know, they present a lot of intriguing evidence for that. But if you think they're rare, that's one possibility. So yes, I will link the videos I mentioned down in the description below, and another video that properly teaches you how to document scat. So yeah, I hope that helped answer some of your guys' questions that you had about scat. Hopefully I'll be able to tackle some of these other questions that you guys asked. If you want to ask your own questions, if you have questions for me, you can follow me on my social medias below, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, if you have your own questions, or to just follow what I'm up to, my updates in Bigfootery. And I think that is going to about wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, thanks for watching. Keep squatching.